Hello and welcome to episode 6. This week I'm releasing an episode which ties in with, in the United Kingdom at least, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And I felt it was really important to release this episode this week, recorded several weeks ago, with Stuart Mills, who created and runs The Noisy Brain, which is an online community. There's a great app. All the links will be in the show notes as always. And I'll let Stuart talk about his journey. But I think it's so important to talk about mental health, and actually the name of this show was nearly the Mental Health Music Show. I've struggled a lot with mental health over the years. Had a kind of my first breakdown sort of when I was in my early 20s. Unfortunately, I was plugged into some very good services. I was very lucky. Had a wonderful community psychiatric nurse who really taught me some fantastic relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, which I still use today. Some of which I will share on some other media. But I mean, it's something that's still not talked about enough, I think, and there's still stigma around mental health. A recent survey of mental health and well-being in England found that 1 in 6 people aged 16 plus had experienced symptoms of a common mental health problem such as depression or anxiety within the past week. This is just people reporting those statistics, so I imagine they're much higher. Anyway, Stuart will talk about his own journey through mental health issues and how he came about to set up The Noisy Brain, which tries to encourage people to write about their mental health. And then encourage musicians to come and look at the writings that people have made and possibly create songs with them or use them as inspirations for songs. It's a fantastic idea, and I think, I really wanted Stuart to explain it to us, and I really encourage people to, get involved, whether you wish to write or whether you wish to create music. It's a fantastic outlet. I know for myself as a songwriter, sometimes it's the only way I feel I can express something is through writing. I've got a very good friend of mine who sends me batches of lyrics, and I know the feeling he gets when he hears his writings turned into a song. It's an incredible feeling, and I know that Stuart will talk about that from the people that he works with and has experienced himself. That sensation of something that you've created becoming something else. And so, I just think it's an incredible thing that Stuart's doing. So today I am joined by a fantastic Stuart Mills, who looks after and curates The Noisy Brain, which is an amazing kind of move to have. Well, I see it, as I said to Stuart just before we're recording, as a piece of mental health infrastructure, which I think Stuart sees a great longevity in this work, and curating this place for people to come to and share stuff. But I'll let Stuart tell you all about it. So hi, Stuart.
Hello, Michael, and thanks for inviting me on today. And hello to everybody else.
Great to have you here.
Where would you like me to start?
Well, I guess at the beginning. I mean, I sort of just stumbled across you on Instagram and just became really kind of excited about, it's not a project. It's much more than that. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the app, and then how. What about The Noisy Brain, and how did it come about for you? What was your journey to get you to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably best to start off with the journey, to be honest. Like a lot of people, I have always suffered from depression and anxiety and things since I was probably a teenager. Sometimes those things sort of come in sort of bigger waves than other. I started my first sort of medication when I was working in London. I used to work in advertising, and it was quite a high pressured job, so I was sort of working hard to keep my job, get my job and keep my job,
Yeah.
And on top of that, I was partying too hard, and you know, um, and I was always sort of dealing with sort of like feeling down, and those dark moments, which I think when you're younger, you sort of just think it's what's happening. You don't really understand it that much. You don't really sort of you're more interested in getting to the Friday night drinks or the evening drinks, as it was pretty much every night in London.
You're missing out lunchtime, surely.
And
Yeah,
lunchtime,
yeah,
yes. Lunchtime turned into evenings usually.
absolutely.
But no, I had all these sort of like bouts of depression, which I didn't really talk about until one day I was found in my office, and I was in a complete mess. And thankfully, the guy that found me knew instantly that I was struggling, and he got HR at the time, which was pretty good at the time, because it was 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And so mental health, and in the workplace especially, wasn't probably that well catered for. And the agency were good enough to sort of like pay for counselling and things for probably 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
Which was great. But then, it sort of came and went, and I got itchy feet, which with London, and I moved to Australia, worked in Australia, then moved to Asia and like Singapore and everything like that. And about 4 years ago, during that time, my moods were kind of reasonably level. We're always having my moments of sort of like dark moments. And I settled back in Singapore, and about 3.5, 4 years ago, like I could feel myself going into one of those dark, long, prolonged moments, and stupidly, I didn't talk to anybody. I kept it to myself and started self-medicating with alcohol.
Yep.
Pretty heavily, and getting myself in more and more trouble because I wasn't admitting my problem, which was depression. And this episode has turned into like suicidal, intrusive thoughts, I'd call it. I wasn't sort of. I don't feel I was planning to commit suicide. But there's a fine line when it keeps coming into your mind at random times.
Sure.
I've talked about it on a few of the articles I've written about my personal sort of experience. I'd be sort of having a lovely day and head to the cinema with my wife, and just the visual of like a bridge in the film I would stop listening to the film and just start thinking of where the nearest bridges are, which, is kind of, when it keeps happening and you start visualizing yourself on that bridge and then not on that bridge, it gets to a quite a distressing, like internal anxiety sort of fueled personal noisy brain conversation with yourself.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And this carried on, and then myself and my wife had a lovely weekend one time, and we were staying in a hotel. It was just like a staycation in Singapore. I live in Singapore, and she went to work on the Monday, and I had the day off on the Monday, and I just found myself on the balcony about 40 floors up, and I was on there far too long, and I really, really scared myself. I was looking over the edge. I wasn't standing on the edge, but I was looking over the edge and just seeing where I'd fall, really. And I was up there for far too long, and I managed to get myself inside from the balcony. And I had to shut the curtains and, lock the door and just basically just make sure I couldn't see outside. And I was in a mess for that. But again, stupidly, I didn't go and seek any help or tell anybody this was happening. I just went for a pint afterwards. And, those pints turned into, a few days of, drinking heavily, which accumulated like about a week later in a major incident with me having an argument with a security guard, and I lashed out, and it was all caught on camera.
Okay.
Someone filmed it, and they posted it online. Like, I'd basically gone the next day to the place to apologize and check on the guy and see if everything was okay. But by then somebody put it online, and it just basically blown up into like a big like media storm, And I spent the next, that was when I admitted to my family and friends what actually was going on. And I found myself sort of in and out of court cases and things for about the next 6 to 8 months.
Sure.
But at the beginning of that process, I admitted to my family what was going on. I actually went to AA because of the amount I was drinking. And I started the steps with a fantastic sort of like mentor from AA. And the guys from AA were fantastic. They were very welcoming. They were non-judgmental. They'd obviously seen a lot of the stuff on the news and in the newspapers, but they all basically had other stories to tell. Some of them a lot worse than mine, but they were fantastic, and they really helped me out. And one day, I no longer go to the AA because what I found was that I was able to stop drinking immediately and not actually feel the need to have drinks. And I was always wondering why I did that. And I was surrounded by these guys and girls who genuinely couldn't. Sure. They were struggling to get to the meetings without having a drink. And I was in a lucky position that I just had stopped. But then I realized that really my drinking was to mask my depression.
Yeah.
My depression was stronger than my dependence on alcohol. Like I and once I'd actually opened up and I talked to people, I honestly, like the weight of the burden of keeping it to yourself, the way I was feeling, the darkness, and as I called the company in the end, the noisy brain, the noise and the fog in your brain. I had such a relief when I started talking to people about it. Coinciding with the incident and opening up and telling people, I had this urge to write. I kept writing everything that was in my head. I needed to write and get it out, and a lot of it was a lot of nonsense. But I was sort of like playing about with that nonsense, and occasionally I'd make it into like a half a poem, or and or sort of like just make it rhyme, or I didn't really know what I was doing and why I was doing it. And then one day I was going to one of the sessions with my mentor, and he was late, and I was sitting in a cafe, and I'm very old fashioned. I've always got a notepad full of lots of scribbles, and
you and me both.
Wherever I go, yeah. And I was sitting in the cafe, and I was just writing, and he turned up, and he sort of like, "What are you writing?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, go and get me a coffee, and I'll read what you've written." And I was like, and I got up, and I took a few steps away from the table, and I suddenly realized that I'd never shown anybody any of this writing. Yeah. And I sort of like had this sort of instant, I don't know what the terminology is, but it was like a decision had to be made very, very quickly, whether I left him the pad or I took the pad away from him. Yeah. And I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? I'm actually telling this guy a lot more things about myself than he's going to read. And what in this in the steps process, I was telling him a lot more about myself. So I left the pad with him and got him a coffee. I came back and he was sort of like really animated, and he'd got his phone out and he was wanting to take photos of these pages. And I was like, why do you want to take photos of this rambling nonsense that I've written? Because I'd literally hadn't shown it to anybody, and this was the first person that read it. And he said, look, I can relate to these 2 pages, and I'd like to make it into a song. And I had literally only met the guy sort of like 3 or 4 months previously when the incident had happened.
Sure.
And I didn't really know much about him. I didn't know he was a musician. And so I just said, yeah, do your worst. And a couple of months later, I finished all the court case, and I spent a little bit of time in Changi prison in Singapore, which wasn't pleasant, but was necessary. And myself and my wife were in a lucky enough position that we just basically were able to take ourselves off holiday. We'd had, a very rough 8 to 10 months of me causing a lot of hurt for a lot of people. And we took ourselves off on a holiday, and I get this text message when I'm on one of the fast trains in Japan, and it just says, "I've finished your song." And then there's next text message came through, and it was the song. And I was just I still get emotional about it, because hearing my words back in the form of a song, which I'm not musical, just completely blew me away that somebody cared about or related to the words that I'd written, and then created something amazing from something bad, creating, turning something bad into something good. And I'm not saying it's the greatest song in the world or anything, but the actual feeling that I had after hearing that, or during hearing that, I immediately just thought, now I've got a reason why I was writing. And maybe I can try and share this emotion with other people. That obviously, if I was to basically encourage people to write about their mental and emotional health issues, we could potentially use this as like a basis to create awareness about each issue. If I could convince musicians to get on board and adopt some of these writings. Yep. So that's a very long-winded way of saying this is how I got to create what is now called the Noisy Brain. And in the Noisy Brain, we're sort of set up as a social enterprise, creating openness for mental and emotional health issues with the collaboration of musicians. So I basically encourage as many people with mental and emotional health issues to write about their experiences. Now, this process isn't for everybody, but for me personally, it was a really amazing outlet which I hadn't used before, which suddenly just, I actually didn't have any plans to use it. I just couldn't stop writing. Yeah. I didn't know what I was writing. And one of them became a song. And so now we are working with musicians all around the world, which again, I wasn't planning. I was going to sort of do a test in the UK, just because I knew quite a few music production houses and people that work in music business in the UK. So I thought I'd just test it in the UK. But I started, doing some posts on Instagram, which I think is probably where yourself saw it. And suddenly it blew up that I mean, we're still talking about small numbers at the moment, but it blew up that lots of musicians contacted me from all around the world. And suddenly I'm dealing with people in America, in Brazil, and Romania, and Ukraine, and like the UK, in Australia, and Singapore. Um, and musicians have been like, getting involved and loving the idea. And I'm so grateful for all of these people's like these talented people's input. So yeah, that's basically what the Noisy Brain does. We encourage people to write about their mental health experiences, and then on occasions we are then able to create those into music. But I think it's bigger than just the music.
Sure,
It's
absolutely.
it's actually creating that opportunity, and encouraging people that haven't maybe thought about journaling, or even writing about their issues or experiences with mental health. It opens up a different outlet that they may not have thought about using before, and it's it is gaining momentum. We've got a lot of songs in production. I think at the last count, we've probably got around about 15. I mean, again, they're small numbers at the moment. There's about 15 finished, and I think there's around about another 40 in production around the world.
Well, that's fantastic.
And so our idea eventually is to sort of like be able to create Noisy Brain albums, for example, and then so each of those songs has a story to tell. So we can then create an album with outlining each of these mental health stories, and also potentially we can make it into documentaries or short films about each of these mental health issues becoming a song. And then who knows where those songs may or may not go. So that's what we're doing at the moment. And I think I personally, like, from previous jobs I've been working in, this is the most fulfilling that I've been. I'm always meeting fantastic people, learning about mental health issues, which I'm no expert. Myself and Michael were talking about this before we started recording, but I'm not an expert. I'd like to sort of invite experts and professionals in the mental health business to sort of help contribute their point of view about music and writing about experiences. And that's kind of the area that I think we would really benefit as a community to sort of learn a little bit more about how the experts see this process as well.
Sure. I mean, for me, like when you said, I don't know where the songs will end up, but I think that the magic is in that creation, in the moments of creation, and then suddenly, hearing something which came from nothing appear. There's such a beautiful thing in that, and I've got a really good friend of mine who's a writer, and he's going through his own stuff, but he just sends me batches of lyrics, and when I send him back an idea, and I can just hear the excitement that he has hearing his ideas become something else.
Yeah.
That relationship is incredible. It's a very intimate, very beautiful thing. Like you said, when you left your book for your mentor to read, it's such an intimate moment, of openness and trust.
It was literally a turning point in my life.
Yeah.
Where if I hadn't have let him read it, I'd still be writing scribbles. I was still writing scribbles, and
it's good.
I'm still writing badly. But I've got a purpose for that bad writing now.
Absolutely. I think you only get to the good stuff through whatever good stuff means. But you get to stuff through doing stuff. It's a journey, isn't it?
That's it. And the beautiful part of it at the moment, as I sort of touched on before, is the relationship with the contributing writers. So the people that are actually having their mental health or emotional health issues, I get to talk to them also. Excuse me. And what part of the process and what I really have enjoyed is introducing them to the musician that's wanting to adopt their writing.
Sure.
And so what we do is we have a talk like we're doing now, with the musician, the contributing writer, and I'm just basically the go-between to introduce them. We'll have a little talk about the issue that is the subject matter of the writing, and then what inspired the musician to sort of like adopt that piece of writing.
Yeah.
And then what I usually do is sort of like introduce them, and it's then their project. It's nothing to do really with me. It's their project and it's their collaboration. So on occasions, some contributing writers, they want to remain anonymous, and they're not keen on having that collaborative part, but they want their writing to be used.
Sure.
Which is completely fine as well. And I'm completely happy with, and we sort of, we allow people to remain anonymous. They can adopt a writing name or a music name if they want to call it, and then it's up to the individuals involved how they want to create. Sure. And some musicians are happy just to read a piece of writing and then go away and make the complete song without any involvement or any extra contribution from the writer. But others like to sort of like ask a few more questions. If all parties are allowing, it can be quite a personal share, and some people don't want to do that, and again, I completely understand that. But the really nice thing is those collaborative talks that these basically strangers are having, and then they're creating something together.
Yeah.
Then the other way which I've started to do is actually have these films, these short sort of like reveals of the final song. So again, we get the original contributing writer, the musician, and myself, and the writer hears their song for the first time, or like the finished song like for the first time. And again, like all of those occasions that have happened, I can see the same reaction that I originally had.
Yeah.
It's a very emotional thing, like hearing your words back as played back to you in song. I mean, it's kind of interesting also because a lot of the musicians that adopt these songs have adopted them unbeknown to myself, but because they've also had similar experiences and issues.
Sure.
And then, during these talks, we find out about that, and it's like, it's an amazing thing for people to, an amazingly brave thing for people to want to share, and
it's definitely what drew me in. I've spent most of my adult life, dealing with mental health issues, and had a major sort of breakdown in my early 20s, and I did a year of residential rehab, which is how I ended up getting into doing the community music stuff that I do. Through something going completely wrong, you get a spark of something comes out of that, So, and it really, that was, it really drew me into wanting to know more about the noisy brain. As soon as I saw it, I was just, really drawn in for my own personal reasons as well as, professional reasons. I just think it's such a wonderful thing that you're doing, and to have a hub of creativity, but based around, mental health issues, which, we need to talk about. The thing I love, and I really wanted to talk about quickly, is the Japanese Kinsugi.
Yes.
Which is, the way of mending pottery, broken pieces, where you don't hide the breaks, you actually emphasize them. So you're not trying to get rid of the history of something, you're wearing the history, and I think it's so important,
Yeah, that was another weird turning point in my life. It all coincided with the same incident, to be honest. My wife knew that I've always talked about having fogginess and wanting to scrub my brain.
Yeah.
like, because it feels foggy and not clear, not, and um, when this incident happened, I just sort of said to her, look, I just don't want to continue doing the previous job that I was doing. I didn't think it was being, I don't think it was helping me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try going back to basics. And thankfully, my wife's been fantastic and very supportive. And, she's helping with me with the noisy brain as well. And in both ways, my noisy brain and the noisy brain. But she bought me a I don't know, like a 10-week course in pottery. And I hadn't done pottery since I was at school, like art college. And I suddenly, all these things came together because the writing was an outlet and I was able to just get everything out, and I was concentrating on just getting everything out. And then I was doing gardening because it gave me opportunity to switch off and do gardening. And then she gave me the pottery lessons, and the pottery I started, and I just really realized that it was literally, you could only concentrate on what literally was in hand.
Yeah.
You had to sort of concentrate on that, which with somebody that just has like those overacted or overthinking mind, actually being able to concentrate on creating something was beautiful, right? Because it cleared, all those sessions were as good as counseling because they just clear your mind.
Totally.
Like you'd actually just do some art. But during that, I wasn't particularly good at it. I would start off making a vase, but then it would collapse and I'd make a plate. So but the reason that I liked it, it was because there was always an end product. Yeah. And I think that's what I struggled with the writing originally, was there was no end product. It was just me reading my writing back to me. And I don't know if that's a good thing, but the Kinsugi came from that. I started looking at how different pottery techniques, and I come across Kinsugi, and I read about Anthony Bourdain, he did the food around the world, the documentaries series, and unfortunately he committed suicide about a year or two before my incident. And I was reading about him, and somebody described him as having a Kinsugi personality, and I didn't actually know what Kinsugi was at that time. And I just happened to look it up, and it related to pottery, which is what I was doing. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I started researching Kinsugi, and like you just explained, the whole process of Kinsugi is to emphasize the faults or the breakages in an object, a pottery, a pot that's been broken, rather than hide them, is to emphasize them and celebrate them.
Yes.
Because they give that object a story. And I think that's an amazing thing that, the Japanese also then apply that same thinking to humans who have overcome something.
Yeah. And
they feel that you're stronger because you have a story to tell. You've had an experience. And I completely agree, like, with when you brought that up. It's something that's such a solid way of looking at life, which I never even thought of before. But I bore a lot of people by trying to explain this a lot of times.
No, I read it on you. There's the blog with the Andy's Man's Club,
yes,
that you contributed to, and I saw that, and I became fascinated with the word watching a repair program. I forgot what it's called, the repair shop, and sometimes people wanting things repaired and not trying to hide stuff, not because you lose the story, and actually the story is often what makes things really important. Well, the story is what makes things important, it is the story. It's our shared stories. Otherwise you don't get attracted. You're not attracted to stuff. It doesn't mean anything, without a story. What does it mean,
Yeah. And I think that's the whole sort of ethos again about the Noisy Brain is, you know, sharing stories is such a powerful way of helping people overcome their sense of vulnerability or aloneness. You know, like a lot of these things that we go through in our own heads, we're embarrassed to tell people,
Yeah.
because we think we're the only one experiencing it. Yet whenever since I opened up, and I wish I'd opened up a lot quicker than I did, would have saved a lot of hassles and everything. But yeah, I mean, as soon as I've done that, there's been so many people that have related to it, and like people contacting me and saying, you know, or thanking people that are writing for the Noisy Brain for sharing, not necessarily me, but that's where I like the fact that we're creating a community that's, you know, it's still in its infancy, but the sharing is sort of like through the songs or through. I can't call them songs. Like I call them writings. There must be a better terminology for them, but I call them writings.
Well, sharings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Writings or sharings, but like I can't call them lyrics until they're in a song. But you know, that's the whole point. Is like, you know, people are able to sort of like open up, and again, you know, just emphasizing you don't have to do it, you know, with your name. You can do it anonymous if that is what you prefer. And a lot of people are putting their names to them, but I completely understand it when they don't want to.
Most importantly, where can people find you?
Yeah, we've got our own app, which is free to download. We're sort of like aiming at, you know, building the community first of all. So the Noisy Brain app, and that's available on all of the platforms. We've got the website, the noisybrain.com website, and also obviously on Instagram. But on Instagram, it's called the Noisy Brainer.
Yeah.
Because somebody else took the Noisy Brain. Which is a pain. But the Noisy Brainer on Instagram is where we are, and please follow us and you know, download the app, and please tell me what you think and what you know. I'm always happy to sort of like hear suggestions or, you know, ways of doing something better. I mean, it's a very fluid sort of idea at the moment. We, you know, it's becoming established, and we're getting a lot of traction with, you know, appearing on podcasts, and different organisations are asking me to, you know, talk about it.
Well, because I think it is. I think it's not only really sort of worthwhile. I think it's really important. You know, and because I think this is one area where, you know, creative arts, and you know, I'm a musician. I've always been involved in music, and I know how powerful music is. And you know, this is its real function. You know, the charts are one thing, but that's not actually music's function. Music's function is about community. You know, that's where it started. It started in community.
I don't know.
You know, I mean, music is about community, and so to be creating this community that you're doing, it's so important. You know.
Yeah, it's become like something. You know, I definitely want to establish it and make it a long term, you know, goal to establish, and you know, keeping, you know, meeting these amazing people that are brave enough to share, and also talented people like yourself, like musicians, which are willing to potentially make some music. You know, eventually we want to be able to reward people for, you know, making the music and also for writing. But at the moment, everybody's doing it off their you know, their goodwill. And I've been amazed at the amount of people that are getting involved. And it's a great movement, not
Yeah.
project.
That's the word. That's the word. The movement.
To be
Yes.
involved with it.
Well, I just
I didn't know whether to call it a movement because it sounds a little bit weird coming from me. But if other people want to call it a movement, that's cool. But
well, it's definitely really important what you're doing, and I thank you for coming and sharing it with us. And and I hope
no, thank you.
I hope our listeners go and check it out and get involved, because it's it's a wonderful thing. And I'm in the process of writing some stuff. It's taken me long because I've just been releasing a song myself and getting this podcast up and running. But I shall have some time to dedicate to that soon. So I really look forward to carrying on with some contributions.
No, cool, and thank you for inviting me to talk about it. It's been a good chat. I hope I haven't babbled too much, like my brain does. Goes off at tangents a lot of the times.
No, real pleasure to have you here. So thank you so much, Stuart, for your time.
No, thank you.
Well, that was Stuart Mills from The Noisy Brain. I've put Stuart's link tree in the show notes, as there are quite a few links there you can download for Apple and Android, etc.